today we've gone to a new volume. Actually, it's part 2 of the same series, that is SD40A, volume 40A, and today is chapter 7. This volume is a very important one. The theme is on levels of learning, so you imagine there's a lot of things to talk about. Stages of learning, how we become wiser through the Dharma. Today's sutta is entitled Nikanta Natakutta Sutta, is the name of the person, but it's not given to him because he's not listening at all. As you will discover, the sutta is very, to a certain extent, is a very humorous sutta. Usually when you see the Chitta, the house lord, you find some humor going on there. So the proponent of the sutta, the main actor in the sutta, is Chitta, the householder. And I'll talk a bit more about Chitta in a while. So Nikanta Natakutta Sutta is the name of the person. In this case, it's not the discourse to so and so. Rather, it's a discourse on or about so and so. So in other words, it's a story centering around this teacher called Nikanta Natakutta. Nikanta is a name of a kind of practitioner, like a religious person. Ganta means a knot, something that's tied up very hard to undo. Nirganta means no more knots. So in other words, no more suffering. So in other words, this is the idea of awakening or enlightenment. So it is an ancient word for a Jain. Jainism is actually older than Buddhism, and the founder of Jainism, historical founder, is this person, Nikanta Natakutta. Natakutta again is not really his personal name, it's not a surname, or even a nickname, son of Nata. Again, we're not sure what this word Nata means. It could mean dancer, or it could mean something else, we're not sure. And the reference for this sutta is S41.8. So the English translation of the title, the discourse on Nirgranta Natakutta. Nirgranta is a Sanskrit translation here used in an anglicized form, so it's an English term. Because some of these terms don't exist in our modern English, so we have to introduce them. Nirgranta specifically refers to the early Jains, right? So some of these terms, it's more convenient to use the original Sanskrit or whatever term used by that particular religion, for that matter by Buddhism. So the theme, Chitta Gahapati, the house lord, does not go by faith. And this confirms Natakutta. Now, Chitta, the house lord, he's a very exceptional layman. You might say, in terms of Dharma, he's the leading layman. He's in many ways, the wisest of the lay disciples. In fact, at the time of this sutta, he is already a non-returner, not just 3 minutes, non-returner. So can you imagine one more step to Arahatut? He is declared by the Buddha to be the foremost of lay disciples who are Dhamma speakers. So he's a very good Dhamma speaker. In fact, he's able to answer many questions, even the monks who consult him. And one more interesting point about him, he's among the lay disciples, he is also a master of the 4 jhanas. He can easily get to any of the jhanas anytime he wants. So he's a formidable lay person, in other words. But if you look at him, you won't know this person is a saint. Yeah? He just looks like an ordinary person. The saint doesn't go around giving a name card. Chitta Gahapati, non-returner. You don't have this sort of arrangement. And we have a whole chapter on him, Citta Sanyutta, in the Sanyutta Nikaya, which is chapter 41, which contains a number of suttas, probably around 10 suttas I think by him. So you can see on page 1, 3 examples are given to you. Samyojana Sutta, the senses are as fetters. Then there's Kamabhu Sutta, number 1, the 3 roots as bondages, 3 roots of greed, hate, division. And there's a Godatta Sutta on the liberation of the mind. So this is one person who really talks deep Dharma. Okay? So this is where it is wrong to say that lay people are not involved in teaching, they are not involved in meditation. Yeah? Today you see more and more lay people want to meditate, or they are meditating. One is just because they want to know the direct teachings of the Buddha. They want to be free from suffering because they understand the Dharma very well. And the problem is people who run temples or centers, and they're only interested in organizations, and they're not happy with such people because you find not many of them would be involved in volunteer work. Or rather, more correctly, these kind of people would go to places where they feel the Dharma is more present. So not surprisingly, I was told a few months ago, Dharma speaker who is a monk actually openly said in the public talk that lay people should not meditate. Only monks should meditate. This is the misstatement of the year. Because any of you here or any one of you watching this video would know, lay people do meditate. I mean, you do meditate, and you find many suttas which talk about lay people meditating. And there's one very important sutta spoken by the Buddha to Anathapindika. Anathapindika comes with 500 disciples before the Buddha. Then the Buddha tells him, he says, you know, Anathapindika, all of you are very strong supporters of the Sangha. You are great givers of dana to the monks. But remember, even lay people should go on retreats. Right? So in other words, lay people should meditate also. Because if we don't meditate, then at least we should keep the precepts properly, have some mindfulness, so that our next life wouldn't fall into the supplement state. So this is very important, right? So these are things we will talk about in greater detail in the next lesson on emotional independence, which is a very interesting study, very important study on the nature of stream winning. What is stream winning? Right? So talking in greater detail about all these important points. So coming back to this sutta, we have Citta, the house lord. This house lord means he's a landed person. Okay? He has land and property, he has houses. So he's a very successful worldly man in a sense, in the worldly terms, but he has become a non-returner. And he has approached, in this case, he approaches Nigantanada Buddha, this teacher, the head of the other religion, because he wants to dispel the wrong perception by this religion. Maybe some people in the non-religious community are saying, oh, the Buddhists are not friendly, they don't talk to other people, they don't welcome other people. So Citta is the kind of person who's very proactive. He sees something wrong, he will go out of his way to set it right. So in that sense, you might say he's the ideal lay person. So he goes to see Nigantanata Buddha. He addresses him as Bhante. You will find that very often non-Buddhists, especially the Brahmins who visit the Buddha, they never address the Buddha as Bhante, which means Sir, Tuan in Malay. Right? They would address the Buddha by name, Bo Gautama, Master Gautama. But even that, in a sense, regarded as polite. Right? You'll be very polite, we don't mention a name, for example. Or depends again, the monks, for example, wouldn't use the name. The monks will simply say Bhante. Unless they are of the more or less of the same monastic age, that they will say venerable, so and so. Because when you say the word venerable, all the monks are venerable. I remember once, long ago, when I was very young, there were like 3-4 monks sitting nearby, and we call them venerable, and everybody look at you. So wondering which venerable. So we will say venerable Ananda, okay, so we're more sure which one it is. So that is more for the junior monks, whereas the head monk only we use the titles. This is protocol, if you like. Anyway, so Chitta, the household is very polite. He sees this Nigata Nataputa. Of course, Nigata Nataputa was very happy, was elated in fact, to see a disciple of the Buddha coming to see him. So his idea is that this man has converted, come to see him, right? So this often creates a humorous situation. It is not the first time. There are other occasions also where, for example, Sariputta would go into Devadatta's camp, and the story goes that Devadatta thought that Sariputta and Moggallana would come to see him, decided to join his breakaway group, and so on. And then you have quite humorous development after that, anticlimactic development. So that's a bit of introduction there. There are, of course, other interesting things about Jainism. You'd like to read section 2 of the introduction. We don't have to detail ourselves with this detail. We are not directly connected with our study today. There are some other interesting points which I will deal with as we go along. Let us go straight into the sutta, page 6. Is that correct? Your page? Page 5. Your sutta? The sutta is, paging is, page 5. The sutta is very short, just 2 pages. Remember the number S41.8. N41 is Chitta Samyutta, the collected sayings or connected sayings on Chitta, the house law. Okay, Chitta means Nataputta. Now at that time, Nigranta Nataputta had arrived in Machika Sanda with a great company of Nigrantas, Jain monks. Now Machika Sanda is the hometown or home village of Chitta himself, if you like. And it also seems to be a Jain stronghold, so you can imagine all these Jain monks meeting there. Chitta, the house lord, heard that Nigranta Nataputta had arrived in Machika Sanda with a great company of Nigrantas. Then Chitta, the house lord, along with some layman followers, approached Nigranta Nataputta, exchanged courteous, friendly greetings, and then sat down at one side. Now, there's something interesting here which I'd like to add. I met at Chan Sujato last week. So one of the things he told me was very interesting, very simple thing. He just mentioned to me, he says, when we translate the suttas, a simple word like upasankamati is a very important term. Upasankamati is found in the opening of the suttas. The sutta would say, for example, so and so approach the Blessed One. Te nupasankami, upasankamitva, bhagavantam, abhivaditva, and so on. Te nupasankami. But where the Buddha was, he went in that direction. So we translate here as approach the Buddha. Then the Pali says, upasankamitva, having approached, he saluted him. So you translate into English, it sounds like almost like redundant, repetitive. Actually, there's a very important significance there. The first word, upasankami, is past tense. In other words, again here, where Pali language is concerned, the tenses are not fixed. Although the word itself is past tense, it need not be translated as past tense. It wouldn't sound right in English idiom. So we may have to translate present tense, present continuous tense. And so we've got to see the context, in other words. Of course, I'm not saying this is the fixed rule. Occasionally, of course, past tense would still work as past tense. But the important thing is it is a flexible grammar. Okay? So, first, Tena Upasankami, which is pronounced as Tenu Upasankami. Okay? This person approaches the Buddha or the teacher. And then, how do you translate Upasankami? I decided to translate, for example, in this case, this is the old translation, so if you revise it, we will say, he approached Nigranta Buddha, having gone up close to him, exchange greetings, exchange courteous and friendly greetings. So in other words, we add the phrase, having gone up to so and so, Upasankamitva. This is a very important aspect of discipleship. In fact, if you look at the Chanki Sutta, there are what I call the 12 steps of discipleship. Okay? And amongst the first 3 steps is to go up close to the teacher. Okay? But those days there are no microphones like this. And even if there are microphone, good PA system in the hall, in a big hall especially, you find if you sit at the back, it's very hard to really pay attention to what the speaker is talking. Because people at the back tend to be teaching about themselves, and then they talk to you, you talk to them, and then you miss what the teacher is saying. So instead of listening to a Dharma talk, you're listening to some gossip, and you have lost the train of the Dharma talk. So usually we would like to sit right in front, so we can pay full attention to the speaker, to the teacher. Right? So that's Upasankamitva, sitting up close to the teacher so that the Dharma transmission is very clear. Right? So this is what Chitta did. He went up close to the teacher and showed respect to him by exchanging greetings. Section 4. Then Chitta, the house of the, okay, that's right already, right? 5. Nigranta Buddha said this to Chitta, the house lord, sitting thus at one side. Okay, this is the big question now. Look at the question carefully. Do you, house lord, have faith in the recluse Gautama when he says there is a samadhi? Okay, we translate this. There is a samadhi without thinking and pondering. Vitaka vichara. There is a cessation of thinking and pondering. Okay, let me explain why. Now, the Pali word here is vitaka vichara. Now, as you know, vitaka vichara is a very important twin compound in meditation. It refers to initial application, sustained application. These are very subtle thoughts working with the mind, meaning we direct our attention to the meditation object, say the breath. And then we hold it there, we keep it there, right? Initial means you direct it there, sustained application, you hold it there. It will be very gentle kind of thought. It's not the kind of thinking that goes on now in our mind, in other words. Now, from the context of this sutta, you will begin to see that Nigranta actually is not a jhana attainer. Probably not even a meditator, as we would say in Buddhism. So, I decided that not to translate in meditation context, which would be initial application, sustained application. In other words, we've got to ask ourselves, what does Nigranta Buddha have in mind when he uses this word? Vitaka vichara or vitarka vichara. In Pali it's the same word, but in English the sense is different. So in this case I would say it simply refers to the usual normal term thinking and pondering. Thinking is vitaka, okay? Pondering is, if you want thinking about it, is vichara. So in other words, thinking is on the non-meditation level. Meditation level is called initial application. Pondering is on the non-meditation level. Meditation level is called sustained application. So these are pair of words are written on the whiteboard, you can notice. That's why I purposely write it there to make sure you understand this difference. Because this is the key question in this sutta, around which this interesting small little drama is woven. Now let me paraphrase, explain this question which Ganthanata Buddha asked Chitta the householder. There are actually two questions here. The first question, the first part of the question is, do you have faith in the Buddha? Okay. The second part is it possible for thinking and pondering to occur during meditation? Alright? Is it possible for thinking and wondering to occur during meditation? In fact, later on, we will discover that Ganthanata Buddha is of the opinion that during meditation, thinking and pondering still occur. It's impossible to stop thinking and pondering. This is his opinion, see. Now this is very interesting, because in recent times, a few years ago, there is one monk who actually took this stand. He probably didn't read this, he must have missed or forgotten this at times. He actually wrote a paper stressing in strong terms that thinking does occur during meditation. And when I read this, I said, oh, this is very interesting. Because from all the suttas that we've read during meditation, we know that when you read jhana, thinking stops. Well, thinking has to stop. Because if thinking doesn't stop, then you won't be feeling happy. Thinking is the enemy of happiness. Happiness is a feeling. In fact, once you start thinking, the happiness goes away. So the moment someone says there is thinking during jhana, you kind of at once wonder, does this person meditate? Or does this person actually attain jhana? You begin to ask such questions. So I decided to do a research and then just kind of compare two teachers, Ajahn Ramawangso and this H. Gunaratana, who took a stand that thinking occurs when Ramawangso says thinking doesn't occur. So to compare the teaching of these two, and then using the suttas to explain. And all this is put together in an essay called The Buddha Discovered Dhyana. It's a very interesting essay. In fact, one of the monks who had this difficulty, which I mentioned, about jhana, thinking and so on, when he read this paper, he was so happy. He wrote to me and he says, oh, I'm so grateful that you written this paper. And this paper is very sensitive because we are talking about living masters, So you have to write in such a way that you're not being disrespectful to them. More importantly, you are not disrespectful to the Dharma. So you can imagine how difficult it is to write such a paper. But I have one advantage. I'm growing older, very old. So as we grow older, we can say anything we like and get away with it. Because we have not much time left. So it doesn't really matter. So, in many ways, I simply wrote what I felt was right in as a polite way as I can, with a bit of apology at the end of the essay, saying, please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying these monks are totally wrong and don't listen to them. I'm just arguing a point, okay, that thinking and pondering doesn't occur in dhyana. This is why I say, from what I understand, from the suttas, from the teachings of meditation teachers, and from my own experience myself. Everyone has a right to their opinion, everyone has a right to be wrong, but just because someone is wrong in certain ideas doesn't mean he's totally wrong, right? We got to see teachers for the good teachings they give us, basically. Learn the right and the good teachings they have. Don't assume that just because the teacher is famous, they are always right? If you notice, this volume itself, the very last sutta, I just want to show you how important this statement is. If you look at page 201, 203, okay, towards the end. 203. It's called Ahitatera Sutta. The sutta, what does it say? Even famous teachers can have wrong views. Okay? So this sutta says that. Notice, just look at number 2. The elder is of long standing, long gone forth, is well known, famous, with a following of great crowds of householders and renunciants, and so on and so forth. Deeply learned, right? Page 202. Yeah? Or the numbering is, mine is 202. Is it? Oh, mine's a old book. Oh, okay. So, yours is page 204. Yeah? Alright. So, this man is very famous, deeply learned, and so on. But further down, see, but he is of wrong view of deviant vision. Okay? So, this can happen even in famous teachers. So, just be patient and whatever good teachings have accepted, if they are wrong, they will change their mind. In fact, I was told after I wrote the paper, some of this monk also reconsidered their opinions. So that's good to do that. Okay, so coming back to this question now. So look at the question again. This is the key point in the sutta. Look at number 5 on page 6. The page is correct? 6. Oh.
Page 5.
Page 5, section 5. Look at the question. Do you, house lord, have faith in the recluse Gautama when he says there is a samadhi without thinking and pondering? This is a new translation. The old translation is initial application and sustained application. So instead of initial application, simply write the word thinking. Sustained application, pondering. In simple terms, Nikanta and Buddha is asking Chitta, do you have faith in the Buddha when he tells you thinking and pondering does not occur during samadhi or jhana? Two questions actually, right? Do you have faith in the Buddha? Number 2, does thinking and pondering occur during samadhi, during meditation? Okay? Now I want you to carefully look at how Chitta replies and Nigantananda Buddha's reaction. Next section, number 6. So Chitta replies, here Bhante. Notice there's a qualifier here, it says here, and he calls, respectfully addresses Nikanta as Bhante. I do not go by faith in the Blessed One. When I say thus, there is samadhi without thinking and pondering. There is a cessation of thinking and pondering. Cessation, ending of thinking and pondering. So he just said this, that's all, you know. I do not go by faith. Now he did not say, I do not have faith in the Buddha. He says, I do not go by faith in the Buddha. Okay? When this sentence, regarding this sentence. At once, Nigantananda Buddha misinterpreted the whole thing, and look at 6.3. When this was said, Nigantananda Buddha looked around at his own retinue and said, see this, sirs, how straight is this Chitta, the house lord, how honest, or not dishonest, this is a double negative, is this Chitta, the house lord, how untricky, or not a trickster, is this house lord. See, look at this wonderful person. In other words, he sees Chitta as if going to his camp, as if converting. So he says, look at this wonderful person. Now, you notice the word looked around. Okay, the commentary says he feels he got puffed up, very proud and self-confident, overconfident. He's telling the audience, look, this leading follower of the Buddha has come over to our camp, so to speak, you know. Now this is funny because this word, look around, is going to repeat at the end. He is going to look around, but this time with opposite way, he's going to be rather upset. Okay? And then Chitta will say something at that time. We will come to that in a moment. So now he's very happy. He thinks that Chitta is getting converted, going to join to become a Jain. And he continues, he says, this is his opinion now, okay? One who thinks that thinking can cease, instead of initial application, use the word thinking. You notice a spell bracket there. One who thinks that thinking can cease or can stop would imagine that he could catch the wind in a net. One who thinks that pondering can cease, can stop, would imagine that he could stop the flow of the river Ganges with his own fist. Not with a palm, but with a fist, trying to stop the flow of the river. So in other words, the opinion of the Nataputta or the Jains at that time is that thinking, you can't stop it, it just goes on, even meditation, because it's such a powerful thing. Right? So this is one disagreement, very great difference between Jainism and Buddhism. Right? Otherwise, Jainism and Buddhism are very similar, especially the terms that we use. We have 5 precepts, they also use 5 precepts, Panchasila, they also have Sila Samadhi Panya, they use words like Arahat, and so on. Right, then, after this, Chitta asks a very important question to set the record right. Here again, Chitta doesn't at once say, you got me wrong. In our time, we would at once say, no, you got me wrong. We are very retaliatory. But in the suttas, you find everything goes smoothly in a kind of dramatic development. So we are preparing ourselves for a very interesting, humorous situation. Section 7, Chitta asks, what do you think, Bhante? Which is more sublime, more important, more spiritually significant, more exquisite, knowledge or faith? Okay? Which is more important to you, knowledge or faith? Now this question is, in a sense, loaded, because in a sense he knows how Nikanta is going to ask, because in the Jains have their own 3 jewels, and in their 3 jewels, knowledge comes first, and faith is later. So Nikanta replies, surely, house lord, knowledge, or if you like, wisdom, is more sublime than faith. Knowledge is more important. This is very important because Chitta wants to make sure that Nikanta declares knowledge is more important than faith. Why? Because remember, Chitta has also said that it is not, basically he's saying, not through faith I have known this. Not through faith in the Buddha I have known this. Okay? Okay, then, alright, there's something else. You need to put the open inverted commas at 8 after 44. Can you see 44? There's open double quote missing. Because now it is Chitta is talking now. Previously it is Nikanta, correct? What is that? Okay. So number 8. Now Chitta gives his lion roar. Sihanada. Lion roar means what? He declares his faith in the 3 jewels. Now I, Bhante, to whatever extent I wish, having entered, dwell in the first dhyana, which is quite detached from sensual pleasures, detached from unwholesome mental states, accompanied by initial application and sustained application, accompanied by zest and joy, born of seclusion. Okay? So now, Chitta declares that he can easily get into the first jhana. And after that, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana, everything we find in full him. So he says he can easily get into it. Why is he saying this? He is stating that it is through his own experience, direct experience, not through learning, not through thoughts, but through his own experience. And what is his experience? Meditation, right? That's why meditation is a very important part of Buddhist training, because meditation is the direct experience of true reality. Then, okay, 8.2 is the second jhana, 8.3 third jhana, 8.4 fourth jhana are given in detail there. 8.5. It is indeed not so, Bhante. Knowing thus, seeing thus, Bhante, in what other recluse or Brahmin need I go by faith? That there is a samadhi without thinking and pondering, a cessation of thinking and pondering. Okay, this is quite a long passage, but the idea is very simple. Chitta says, sorry, I don't agree with you. Yeah. Says, not that you agree, knowledge is important, so we use that fact, but you are wrong in saying that thinking must go on even during meditation. That idea is wrong. Okay. He says, I have experienced the four jhana myself, personally. Since I've experienced the four jhana myself, I don't need any recluse or Brahmin, even the Buddha. I don't need faith in anyone because I know it for myself. Notice this statement doesn't mean he doesn't have faith in the Buddha. What he's saying is he doesn't need to have faith in the Buddha. But ironically, because he has experienced dhyana and this truth, he has faith in the Buddha through his wisdom, in other words, through his wisdom. So because he knows for himself that what the Buddha has taught is true, that thinking and pondering do stop during meditation. So you notice that is why we cannot translate Vitakka Vichara as thinking and pondering, because in the first jhana there is still thinking and pondering. But in the second jhana, no more. Second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana onwards, no more thinking and pondering. So in a sense you might say thinking and pondering as we know it does stop at the first jhana. The Vitakka Vichara of the first jhana is too subtle an experience to be translated as thinking and pondering, which we normally do in our daily life. Okay, is that clear enough? Okay, so having said that, Niganta realized he has been duped. Actually, he is not duped. He misunderstood what Chitta is saying. You follow the argument now? He misunderstood what Chitta is saying. Because when Chitta says, it is not through faith in the Buddha that I understand this, that thinking and pondering stops in meditation. And then now he says, he has experienced meditation himself, so you know this is true. And he disagrees with this Niganta. So the Niganta is upset now because it's proven wrong. So now the second half of the sutta, you have the tables turn. Niganta says, or rather, let's look at 9, section 9. When this was said, Niganta Nataputta looked around. Okay, notice he looked around again, but this time he's very upset. And said this to his own congregation. See this, sirs, how crooked is this Chitta. Remember the first word he used previously? What's the word there? Sorry?
Straight.
How straight, that's how crooked, okay? And then, how dishonest. What's the first word he used? Honest. So he said, how dishonest is this Chitta, the house lord? And then, how tricky. Previously it says untricky, right? So now he says, how tricky is this Chitta, the house lord? So now he, in other words, says exactly opposite of what he said earlier, you see? And this is where the humor is, because Chitta has been to point this out, you know? So basically Chitta says, oh, this is interesting. Now you call me a cheat. Previously you were announcing I was a great guy and so on. Now I'm confused, you know? Which one is right? You can't have both correct, you know? So either if the first one is false, the second one must, if the first one is true, second one must be false. If the second statement is true, first one must be false. Either way, Nataputta is caught. You see my point here? That Nataputta is confused. So imagine how upset his leader is. And so he is very angry with Chitta. Notice how Chitta puts it. 9.3. But Bhante, only just now we understood you as saying, See, this says how straight is this Citta the house lord, how honest or not dishonest is this Citta the house lord, how untricky or not a trickster is this Citta the house lord. But now we understand you saying just opposite. Okay? Section 10, Bhante, if your former statement is true, your later statement must be false. If your later statement is true, then your former statement must be false. So both cannot be true. So the poor Niganta is caught. So now Niganta is silent, doesn't want to say anything, he's very upset. And this time, Citta comes up with another bigger salvo, okay? Something even deeper still. This time he challenges Niganta, says, now Bhante, we come to these 10 reasonable questions. Okay, I have to ask you 10 questions. As you understand their meaning, let you and your company of Nigrantas so respond to me. Okay, please answer according to what you think is right. The one question, the synopsis on the one, the answer on the one. Imagine you just take this one question. You will say, what does this mean? You imagine he is asking this very deep question. He says there is the one question, and then you have the explanation of the question, and then the answer. The two questions, the synopsis of the two, the answer on the two. The three questions, synopsis of on the three, the answer on the three. Or the answer to the three, if you like. Either way, possible. So then it says the 3 question, the 4 question, the 5 question, the 6 question, the 7 question, the 8 question, the 9 question, the 10 question. In other words, you've got to rephrase this. He didn't say first question, second question, third question, fourth question, and so on up to 10. He's saying this is a question on what is 1. This is a question on what is 2, what is 3, and so on, or what are 3, what are 4. This is a basic set of questions actually, where novices, beginners are taught how to answer basic things. Right? For example, what's the one thing we learn in Buddhism? Okay? Here in the what is called the boys' question, the novices' question, they are taught 10 basic things when they first become renunciants, or they take the road. 1, usually the answer 1 here is everything is sustained by food. Okay? And then there are different kinds of food. So you have to explain in detail what you mean by that. Right? So you got the question, what is the 1? Answer, everything is sustained by food. That's the synopsis. And then the explanation, the answer of explanation is even in detail. There are different kinds of food. For example, number 1, we have physical food, right? And then another kind of food is the thoughts that go into our mind. Then our consciousness, the senses, or the sense experiences, our volition. These are all food. So basically, we can say there are 2 kinds of food: physical food and food for the mind. Okay? But one thing here is food. Then what is the 2? The 2 is name and form, nama rupa, right? I look at something, it's 4 elements there, I give it a name, okay? Name, form. What is the 3? The 3 kinds of feelings, right? Pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, neutral feeling. And number 4, this is more detailed, the 4 kinds of food, right? Which is an elaboration on question 1. So here you find you have solid food, sense contact, mental volition, and consciousness. 4 kinds of food. And then 5, of course, the 5 aggregates. 6 are the 6 internal senses: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. 7 are the 7 stations of consciousnesses. In other words, how beings are formed in 7 in 7 ways in terms of consciousness. And what are the 7 here? They are you have these beings who are different in body and perception, beings different in body, same in perception, and so on. In other words, for example, human beings, we have different body, different way of thinking. Some of the heavenly devas, like the jhanas, they only enjoy one kind of feeling, very nice, peaceful feeling. Different bodies, some of them same body and so on. So these are different ways of looking at how consciousness functions. And then you have the 8 worldly conditions, remember? Gain and loss and so on. And then the 9 abodes of beings. The 9 abode of beings, we have the 7 station of consciousnesses, neither perception or non-perception, and then the non-percipient beings, the non-conscious beings. So these are another way of looking at the various levels of rebirth. And then we have what are the 10. The 10 are the 10 unwholesome causes of action. Right? One who overcomes all the 10 causes of unwholesome action is called an arhat. Right? The 10, first you got the 5 precepts. Okay? If you keep the 5 precepts well, you become a stream winner. The 10 unwholesome actions are an elaboration of the 5 precepts plus 3 mental precepts, as we like. 3 aspects of the mind, that is what they call right, opposite of wrong view, violence, and what they call this ill will. Okay? So altogether you got 10. In other words, 3 bodily action, 4 speech action, 3 mental action, body, speech, and mind. Okay? Altogether you got 10. Akusala, karma, patan. So these are the 10 questions, which apparently Niganta refuses to answer. Now it's not mentioned why he doesn't want to answer. Maybe he's very upset with Chitta, the house lord, so he just kind of rebuffed it and doesn't say anything. Or maybe he doesn't know the answer, we're not told. Okay? Whatever it is, Chitta felt, well, okay, that's it. So he decides to leave. Look at the last line. Then Chitta, the house lord, not getting any answer from Niganta Nataputta, rose from his seat and left. Now this is good enough, because when someone doesn't answer such a question, by that silence they concede defeat. And this is bad enough, so to speak, for Niganta Nataputta. So in a sense, he's really caught in a double bind. He's so upset he could not answer the question, or he doesn't know the answer, he could not, so he remains silent. Either way, Chitta, noticing that he's silent, he leaves. Right? So this is the story of how Chitta approaches Niganta Nataputta, and in a sense it's like going into the enemy's camp and messing up the whole camp, by asking all these kind of questions. So I hope you can see the wisdom of Chitta and also the humor behind this story. It's not about making fun of any teacher here. It's about, number one, listening very carefully to someone when someone tells you something, or when someone answers a question. Okay? And then number two, when someone, what is this person trying to say? So we have to counter question and so on. Okay? And number three, we should not underestimate anyone. Even though Chitta is a layman, he's a very wise person. Although he's not a monk, he's a very wise person. And number four, we should be inspired by his personal example, that we too, as lay people, we can study the Dharma, be good in the Dharma, be good in speaking and argumentation, and in that way we can propagate the Dharma and preserve the teachings for a long time to come.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
This chapter on Chitta,
Yes.
on page 5, note 24, it says Chitta is declared by the Buddha
Yes.
to be the foremost Dharma speaking
Dharma speakers.
amongst the laymen disciples.
Yes.
So it's not monastic.
No, that's not.
But This is the first time I hear the name Chitta. My question is this Chitta mentioned in other suttas?
Oh yes, yeah, he's very famous.
He's a well-known guy.
Yeah, he's got his own whole chapter in the connected discourses of the Buddha.
He's supposed to be the best of the layman.
Yes. In fact, even when he was passing away, he was teaching Dharma. Imagine he was teaching Dharma, Devas were present, so his living relatives could not see anyone. So they thought he was delirious. Imagine someone is dying and start talking about impermanence. So the relatives thought he was delirious. They said, no, there are these Devas here, and they are leading to me to be reborn as a Chakravarti, as a world monarch in the next life. Make this kind of like an aspiration, be reborn as a king, so that he can offer very grand sacrifices to these Devas and so on. But Chitta is telling them no such thing. I mean, instead, Chitta is teaching them the nature of impermanence. Even as a Deva, your glory also won't last forever. So even on his deathbed, he was teaching Dharma. So he is that ideal lay person who is always dynamic in the Dharma, very clear-minded, very sharp, very wise. Yeah, we don't hear much about him. That is why we need to know. There are a number of other suttas that talk about him.
So he lived in Buddha's.
Correct, he is the Buddha's time and Buddha's direct disciple. At first, at the beginning of his discipleship, he was a very eager student. For example, he met a monk one day, discovered this monk at Sakyapata. So he went up to the monk and insisted the monk perform or show him some miracles. And this monk somehow, he should have obliging, you see. So this monk performed a miracle, but after that the monk felt it's not right to stay there, and the monk kind of disappeared, and he went to another place, never came back. In fact, he offered his own orchard, his own, what we call this, grove for this monk to stay. But the monk felt that it's not proper, because then, that's not what monks are supposed to do. So even early as a layman, he was very enthusiastic. But as he progressed in his practice, and so he became more mature, more wise. And then he became Stringvina and then non-returner. So he became a saint. Non-returner, just one more step below Arahathood. So he has taken up the monastic package, in other words. So there are stories of laymen who are non-returners. Any question? Yeah.
You mentioned that there is this foremost Dharma speaker for layers. Is there any other great 10 great examples that you have there? So is there any 10 great?
For lay people, is it? Lay people, not that I know of, they're not listed like those 80 arhats. But I suppose you can yourself list 10 of them. Because, for example, even Anathapindika does give good Dhamma talks, although he rarely does that, but he doesn't do it so often, like Chitta does. So in terms of Dhamma speaking, Chitta will be number one. In terms of Dana, will be Anathapindika. So there are other lay people also, so you kind of to look around a bit. You have people like Nakulapita, Nakulamata, they are declared by the Buddha to be the leading couple. They are the most loving couple. So parents are kind of like advised to follow their example. Okay, so there are such lay people. You got to look up separately because there's no standard list of them. Whereas in the Theravada commentary, we have the list of 80 great disciples, but not the lay people. One reason I think is because the lay people are scattered over a big area of India, so they don't follow the Buddha around. When Buddha comes to Savatthi, okay, the lay people are there. For example, Chitta, he lives in Machika Sanda, which is, Sanda means like a forest, so you might say quite a remote area in a sense. So we don't have everyone in one place. But the lay people who are, you can look up Anguttara Nikaya, volume, the first part, chapter 1. You have a list of all the Etadagga. Etadagga means those who are foremost in certain qualities. beginning with the monks, and then the nuns, and then laymen, laywomen. They are all listed there. Who are important for what? Okay, the chapter of ones. You can look up. And as you know, the Anguttara Nikaya, numerical sayings already translated by Kubodi. Yeah? If you can't get it, just let me know. I can tell you where to look it up. Email us. Any other question?
What would you feel about this knowledge of faith?
Yes.
The knowledge that in the Buddha time, is it that the knowledge is get from Buddha teaching?
Well, I think in Buddhism, in Buddhist terminology, it would be wisdom and faith. These are the two faculties. Remember there are 5 faculties, right? So you got, normally we begin with faith. Some people, they have faith. So your faith faculty is strong. You practice impermanence, it still works. For example, you can say, I have faith that everything is impermanent, and you won't be wrong. Or you can use wisdom, examine it carefully, study the suttas. So these are 2 balancing qualities. If you have a lot of wisdom, you should cultivate faith. If you have a lot of faith, cultivate wisdom. Right? And then next you have effort or energy. And on the other side you have samadhi, concentration. So one is very mentally centered, the other is very bodily centered, very kind of assertive and so on. So again, you've got to balance each other. For example, in the case of what they call Sona, the musician, right? He was doing walking meditation very intense, really tried very hard until his feet bled. So the Buddha had to kind of appear to him and say, middle way, right? Don't have too much effort. You must learn to calm down and focus, calming your mind, stillness. So you need to balance out. And right in the middle of this 4 is mindfulness. Mindfulness moderates everything else. Okay? In a sense, mindfulness is the most important faculty in practical terms. But in spiritual terms, wisdom is the most important. But generally when we talk about people, we talk about wisdom and what's the other one? Faith and wisdom. These are the 2 main categories which people who come for Dharma talks, practitioners would fall into. Okay?
Faith in Buddhism is very different from faith in Christianity.
Yes. Faith here is
just first steps.
correct. It is said, avecca pasada. You might say faith through understanding. For example, take a simple case of permanence. Right? Any simple person doesn't know Dharma very well. Look around, they know death is real. Right? So it's something we can experience directly. You don't have to believe that pain is painful. So there is some level of direct experience there also. So it's not blind faith. Blind faith definitely is still rejected. Wisdom, on the other hand, is like questioning and testing and seeking. So these are 2 aspects. Not taking things for granted.
Right. There is a venerable Ajahn book. He mentioned about the student. He said that when you come to the monastery, you can leave your book aside. Meaning that this Dharma book, when I say that it's a core knowledge, okay, you can leave this aside. Okay, you don't have to do this. Meaning that you must be afraid in the teacher.
In a sense, yes. In a sense, but I think what usually the teacher would mean is keep your mind open. I mean, if you really want to learn, you've got to keep your mind open. And you'll find that this is the case in the suttas where the wise monks are concerned, especially the Buddha. He will question very carefully, did this happen? For example, when someone comes and complains to the Buddha, oh, monk A did this, something wrong. And then the Buddha say, okay, bring monk A here. Monk A comes along, and then the Buddha will question him again. Did you do this? Okay, he didn't say, why do you do this? He doesn't go straight away and ask. He asks again, did you do this? Then the other monk will say yes or no, and then we say, yeah, okay, why did you do this? So he doesn't take it for granted. So when the teacher says, leave all your books behind when you enter a monastery, or for that matter when you go before a teacher, The meaning is that listen to what the teacher is saying in context, and then question. Some people, they're not really fixed. Even in public talk, you say, you give a talk, you're not finished. Straight away they say, oh, I don't agree, it's wrong. But they're not listening. They just have a fixed idea, and then they're not only unwise, also rude, because they didn't listen to everything the teacher is saying. So then this kind of person, they have stopped learning, so it's not helpful. So what these wise monks like to tell you is, learning is, in other words, sometimes they may challenge what we have held before. But there's nothing wrong if we discover, oh, this is a new way of looking at something. That is why I've written a paper called The Notion of Ditthi. I think this is previous volume, is it? The Notion of Ditthi, which is a very important essay. In fact, this volume has got some of the most important essays I wrote. Views, whatever views we hold right now, because we are not awakened people, we got to take them all as provisional. Provisional, that means just for the time being. For example, we know all these teachings, and then you find this teacher say this teacher say that, sometimes they contradict. For example, you have Monk A says, jhana, no more thoughts. Monk B says, no, jhana, you still have thoughts. It's two contradictory statements. So you should be curious, why does monk say that? And then you start examining carefully. It's very interesting when you do that. So the monk A is right in this way, but not right in that way. Monk B is right this way, not right in that way. So you begin to compare what's right, what's wrong. And from there, you enhance your own understanding. So in other words, as long as you're not awakened, we can never know exactly what is right. So everything is still, the jigsaw puzzle is still incomplete. So that's the meaning of putting aside all our old stuff. Okay? Just be ready to learn new things. And then you find it's okay to let go of old opinions. If we look at ourselves, what have we been doing all our life? As we grow older, as we mature, we've been letting go of other views. So this is a kind of renunciation. As we become more mature, we will let go of old views. When you're a little child in primary school, you have certain views. When you go to secondary school, you let go of the views when you had as a primary school child. You go to university, again, you change your opinion. When you get married, you change your opinion about life. When you become a monk or a nun, again, you change your opinion. So all the time we are going through this interesting development. Hopefully, become more mature as we go. I've changed my opinion again and again about this. I said, wow, this is interesting. I discovered something new about the Buddha. There was a time I thought, all these arahats and Buddha, they are so powerful and enlightened, they probably have no feelings. So you can say anything to them, they won't get angry. Then later, I look, I said, oh, the sutras actually say monks and arahats have feelings, but they're not the kind of feelings we have. Their feelings are different. They are very calm. You can say anything to them. They just hear sounds, they don't get upset. Okay? So this is where learning is a very interesting thing. If we do not put a stop to it. Learning is like water flowing. So you must let it flow. Learning is like breathing. You cannot stop your breath. You must let the breath come in, go out, come in, go out. Then we grow. That's the meaning of learning. Notice, the real learners are the stream winners, one-returner, non-returners. They are called learners, seka. Then the arhat is called non-learner. He has nothing more to learn because he's already free from suffering. He doesn't need to know the form of the truth anymore. He has understood it completely. It's just like you first learn cooking, you don't know how to cook, you learn names of the ingredients and then the tools for cooking. Then you learn fire, how hot, what kind of oil to use, and you start cooking. And once you know how to cook already, no need to learn anymore. You know what to do. Non-learner. That's the meaning.
Yes, it's not about getting awakened. An arahant can still be a human being.
Yes, he is a still human being.
And so long as he is a human being, he is open to, let me say things from wrong views. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Okay.
So because it's human, so we can have thoughts.
Well, I think we have to put everything in proper context. Talking about Arhat is quite tricky here. When we say Arhat is still human, we're talking about his physical body. Physically, he's still human, but mentally unclassifiable. Definitely not a human anymore. Because the human mind depends a lot on thoughts. So physically, he's a person, yes. So legally, you have a body, you have legal rights, and you have this mind which is clear, okay? So yeah, in a sense, he's a person in terms of physical body. Fingerprints are still unique, so technically he qualifies to be a citizen, You can still be given, let's say, a card and you can travel on the train. But mentally, he's not a human anymore, because he won't be reborn. So he won't have wrong views because he doesn't hold views. Alright? And because he has no views, he won't be reborn. So that aspect you have to understand. So mentally, he's normal, a human being as we understand it. So he wouldn't have wrong views. So there was this big argument after the few hundred years after Buddha passed away, whether Arahats can have wrong views or not. So that's when the Sangha began to split. So very serious questioning. So and then you have the big group, the majority group became the Mahayana. So they are the ones who started downgrading the Arahats. Big problem for that, So when I look at all this, after 50 years, I told myself, wow, I think we have to be sure where we stand when the Dhamma is concerned, especially when you know the sutta so well. You cannot say everyone is right. I think some are right, some are wrong. Sometimes they are right, sometimes they are wrong. We've got to be sure what we're talking about. Otherwise, anything goes, then I don't know, what makes a Buddhist? Quite complicated. So, as we progress in understanding the teachings, we will find that is my quality of life built up or not? Is my inner peace growing or not? Things like that. Or are we just doing things to preserve our culture, our race, and then we are just staying on the worldly levels? Because ultimately, race is a limiting thing. The race has to grow so that it becomes rich and more intelligent. And then we talk about globalization. There's only one race, that's the human race. Not Chinese, Indian, Malay, whatever. And again, even in religions, there's only one religion, which is truth. Easy to say, but you find a lot of people still stick to different opinions. So these are things which we need to grow out of as we progress through our grand civilization over many millennia. I mean, if you look, say, 1 millennia ago, 1,000 years ago, the people's idea of religion is very different. We might even say 100 years ago, around the time Singapore was founded even, you find it's a very different society. We are ruled by Victorian politicians who, to them, the Church of England is the high and mighty truth, and to them that's the only truth. And we probably will follow that kind of flow. But now, you find in England nobody cares about the church very much, So people are more open nowadays. So this is where we got to question, for example, why people in the West are so drawn to early Buddhism, meditation, the Dharma from the suttas. They are slowly moving away from all this Mahayana and Zen and Vajrayana. They want a real simple, direct practice. And they're very good when they write about all these reflections on the suttas and Theragatha, Suttanipata and so on. So they have discovered something really profound here. They're not interested in religion as culture, religion as race, religion which limits us the Vedantas. I was just reflecting yesterday when I was writing something about the difference between civilization and culture. Okay? Culture limits us. Culture tends to control us, label us, fix us. Okay, you are Chinese. You're only Chinese, you are this kind of Chinese, that kind of Chinese, and so on. That's culture. Culture tends to push aside others. You are not Chinese, and so on. Okay? Civilization is different. Civilization is an ongoing thing. It's what makes human, and more than human. So that wherever we go, human civilization changes society. It brings out the best in us, no matter what race you are. And it gives us freedom. So if you look between culture and civilization, in this case, definitely we would say civilization is more important. And Buddhism is a form of civilization, if you look in that way. So if you see Buddhism as a civilizing influence, definitely it will be a better presence in the world than a culturating factor. I mean, if we say we want to spread Chinese Buddhism, are we going into the world and say, hey, you better become Chinese Buddhist? It doesn't make sense. Simple as that. See, you don't go around going to America and say, I want you to become Chinese Buddhist. So that's why I'm saying culture limits, is it? Whereas if you go out there into the world, you go to Russia now, some monks are telling me Russia, they're becoming interested in Buddhism. They're translating the Tripitaka into Russian now, almost finishing. You don't go there and say, I want you to be Chinese Buddhist. It doesn't make sense. Huh? We just say, be Buddhist. Even the word Buddhist is just a term. What we really want to say is, be at peace with yourself. Be free from suffering. It's beyond race, beyond national boundaries, beyond male, female, even beyond religion. So these are some things we need to consider if we want to make Buddhism a truly successful presence in our modern world. Again, having said that, I'm not against any kind of cultural development. It's good, it serves its purpose where it's needed. Say locally, okay, this is a Chinese temple, we keep up Chinese tradition, it's fun to be here, people work together with common language. That's definitely good. And the Buddha also says it's good to continue what's good in culture. At the same time, a good culture is able to adapt itself, able to connect with other cultures instead of antagonizing, contradicting, going against other cultures. That's the meaning here. Right? So there must be a balance between this microcosm and the microcosm, which is culture, and the macrocosm, which is civilization. Okay?
Coming back to this one thing, if someone is really considering Buddha, is there another steps for saying?
Okay, again here depends what background we're using, what paradigm we're using. If we talk from early Buddhism, you have the Buddha at the top. Okay, so he's the one who gets enlightened, and then he teaches the others. Now why he's Buddha is important to us because he's gone through all kinds of suffering. So he's like, as I said, very simply put here, he's a PhD in suffering. He knows everything there is to know about suffering. So we don't have to go through all that he has gone through, not necessarily. Very troublesome, it's going to take a long time. Giving up our kingdom and wealth and our wife and children, wow, it's not an easy thing. So those who follow his method, which is very easy, you just say, this is all you need to do. And you'll be free from suffering. They are called arahats. Arahat's awakening is no different from the Buddha's awakening. No difference. So there is no need to say arahats still need to be awakened. This is very serious wrong view. Because the Buddha clearly said, there's nothing more to be done. Nothing beyond this. Arahat already awakened. I mean, if someone's already awakened, you don't have to awaken this person again. So all this idea from the Lotus Sutra and so on, later Mahayana, talking there about the arahats, there are some other agenda. They're not talking about the arahats, early Buddhism, I think. At that time, in their own society, probably they found the monastics, becoming more worldly and not proactive, not really meditating even. So they felt that they got to write something to jolt all these people up. So it's a very radical kind of statement in the Lotus Sutra. Yeah? So, because if they were attacking the Buddha and so on, it's obviously they really don't even have a basic understanding of the early teachings. So then you have a serious problem with that. Yeah? So we got to understand what are they writing about? What is the audience? It is not a sutra in the early Buddhist sense. It's just like today a book on Star Wars or even like classic CUG, these Wujanen's classic. These are definitely great works in world literature, but it is not of the same level and sacredness as the early suttas. They were written around the time Christ was born, not in the Buddha's time. So these are things we must understand. Otherwise, the scholars are going to just laugh at us, or the scholars have a way of saying okay to you as long as you support them because they need sponsors and support. So many of them are going to Japan, the Japanese a lot of money, so they're studying Japanese Buddhism. And so we think, wow, Japanese Buddhism must be right, so many scholars are studying it, We are building up a religion. It can be anything. We can start a Singapore or New Singapore religion, worshipping the Malayan if we get enough money and get the scholars to come along. Create a legend, a mythology behind the Malayan and start worshipping it and build a big, huge Malayan in the center of Singapore on Bukit Timah Hill. It'll be a very successful religion, I guarantee it. Money is the foundation of modern religion. Wherever you look around, you see this. Now, of course, buildings come second. You see Japanese Buddhism, a lot of money, big buildings. And next thing they tell you, don't get involved with other groups, only stay with your group. This is what those Soka Gakkai people like to tell their groups. You see. When I first came to Singapore, they invited us, the Buddhists, they want to talk to you. We were so happy. We said, wow, this is news, These Soka Gakkai people want to talk to non-SK people. So they say, oh, we changed our policy now, we want to be friends with you all. I asked them one basic question, which at once betrayed their real intention. I said, would you allow your youth to join our activities? Let them come, exchange, let them come and join our activities and be friends. They said, oh no, we can't do that. We only want to communicate on the high level. In other words, they want our cooperation, our ideas, for themselves, not for our good. Later we found out why they're so friendly. Because their leader in Japan got thrown out of the national organization. The monks, the Soka Gakkai monks, were not happy with Ikeda, so they threw him out. So he suddenly became alone, So suddenly he felt, oh, we got to make friends with others. So there you are, religious politics. So you've got to be aware of what's going on. Bigness, things are not a definition of religion. Religion is a matter of the heart, a matter of how you treat people, how happy we feel. Okay?
Is it true that the group of this during the Buddha time, are they from Deva?
Sorry?
This group of Arahan during the Buddha time, are they from
Devas?
Yeah.
Which Devas?
I don't know which Deva, because I heard someone say that this group of people during the Buddha time, they attained Arahan.
Well, yeah, it's possible past life, some of these disciples of the Buddha, they were Devas, possible. Possible. I mean, we all past time we were Devas before, but as you know, you go up, you go down like snake and ladders, you see. So once the karma finishes, you come down, with the good karma, you're reborn there. Okay? It's not difficult to be reborn in the heavens. You do a lot of generous work, you keep your precepts, but you don't practice impermanence, you go to heaven. After that, karma gone, a nice holiday, zap, you go down to suffering states. So it's better to keep your precepts, be kind and generous, reflect on impermanence also. Then you become a street winner, you go to heaven, you come down to earth, it's just up and down like this. You won't go below human state. Because you go below human state, very difficult. You stay there a long, long time. And I'm talking about astronomically long time. Some, in the past, they were not Devas, they were human beings who come from very unfortunate circumstances also. And I would say, if you follow the Jataka stories, even the Buddha, you notice his past life, he was a monkey, he was an elephant, he was long, long ago, further back, he was even a bad person, but then he changed. So in a sense, anyone can become Buddha. Okay?
So whether you consider Arahan Buddha depends on context.
Normally we won't refer Arahan as a Buddha. It's just like saying that the ensign in the ship is the captain. that he can be a captain. And of course, maybe in many, many more years if he wants to be a captain, but we don't talk in those terms. It just doesn't sound right. Again here, as I said, it depends on the context. Because I'm talking from early Buddhist context. So if you talk from Mahayana or Yana, I suppose it may sound meaningful to them. But then you've got to find out what they mean by it. But in the early Buddhist context, it wouldn't make sense because there's nothing in the sutta to back up what we are saying. Because it's a totally different system. Arahats are simply those who are free from suffering, awakened. They do not need to become Buddha. The word Bodhi is used, yes, Bodhi means awakening here. But the Buddha, which is the starter, will reserve out of gratitude to the first person, founder. It's just like the head of the family. So it's the father, and we should respect this.
So in some of the Buddhist stories, you say 1,000 Buddhas,
yeah,
those are all different.
That's different, that's Mahayana. The moment you say that, you know it's Mahayana text. So many Buddhas, they're not human Buddhas. They're not Manushi Buddha. Even in the Sanskrit terminology, they do distinguish human Buddha. Normally human Buddha is only one, and there are these cosmic Buddhas who come from other universes. They're not the kind of Buddha like Sakyamuni. So you've got to read very carefully what they're talking about. There's a bit of competition in numbers as history goes. Yes? Okay, any other question? Alright, so I hope you found today's study interesting and something to reflect on. So, next week we go on to next lesson, we're going to emotional independence, very important study on nature of stream winning. Let us do a short reflection for this moment. Today we have reflected on the teachings given by Chitta, the house lord, to the unwilling Nikantana Taputan. And of course we are the ones who benefit greatly from this kind of teaching, to understand that number one, lay people also can excel in the Dharma, and we should learn to listen very carefully to what others are saying. Above all, we should listen very carefully to what the suttas are saying, so that we don't confuse ourselves, we don't suffer unnecessarily. We just want to unburden ourselves so that our boat sail faster and safer in the seas of storms. The Dhamma should make us happy, feel light-hearted, and lead us to liberation. Reflecting in this way is very good mental karma. That about such karma, may we be at peace with ourselves and prosper in this life itself. Through all the good deeds we have done, listening to the suttas, practicing generosity, keeping the precepts, doing our meditation, and so on and so forth. Maybe attain spiritual liberation, aspire to at least stream winning in this life itself. In this moment of peace, let us send out our loving kindness to all the beings here, that they may be well and happy, to all the people who work here, people who come here. May they be at peace with themselves, may they grow in wisdom. And let us send our loving kindness to our loved ones, relatives and friends, and even to those who are far from the Dhamma, that they may see the Dhamma for themselves and awaken in their own way. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu.